Okay, so now what I was saying before is if I grab this control, I can do stuff to the rotate Y, but I already am doing quite a bit to the rotate Y on this channel. In fact, let's see if I'm doing much to the rotate X. I'm not doing much to the rotate X, so what I did to the rotate X here isn't really a bad thing, and it's actually going to carry out through the rest of the body too. So rotate Z on my main hips. I do have a little bit here. Again, I'm going to just clean this up. I'm just going to think about what this means. So what is rotate Z? And the best way to figure that out is just grab it and shift it and say, okay, it's the side-to-side rotation, right? And so if maybe this would be better to look at from the front. So we have the character kind of leaning, and it seems to lean its most at this point here, right? But it seems to lean more on this side. It feels very asymmetrical, doesn't it? And so let's kind of look at that and see, do we like that better? Okay, so I kind of like that far lean on the other side. So I'm just going to go ahead and adjust this and kind of make it happen like that on both sides. I'll probably clean it up and make it kind of favor the top here a little bit, though. Does that make sense? Okay. So now that we have that, if we look at this now, see the character is kind of leaning to each side, and we're getting some pretty nice results from that. Now, it's probably screwing with our legs. We may get like I think it was right here. It looks like it bent our leg a little bit more, but not a lot. Alright, so I'm not unhappy with that. And this is also just a little bit more symmetrical. Now, it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. In fact, I would beg you not to make it perfectly symmetrical. But I get that it needs to have a little bit more consistency in it. Just in general, you know, if one piece is if one piece is doing something like this and the other one looks like this, then you know that you've done something slightly not something irregular a little bit. And so, although you don't want a perfect sine wave, you want a little bit of that going on. Okay, so we got that. The next thing I would probably do is I would make sure that the feet are working with the hips, because this is what's going to control sort of the motion and the rotation of the hips. So by changing some of that, we but that's kind of locked in place now. Like, we know how far down the hips are going to dip, and so now we can just work with the feet to kind of make that work with the sort of the center of gravity. It's not really the hips control as much as the center of gravity. So the first thing is, let's look at this control here, and over the period of 3 frames, 1, 2, 3, actually 4 frames, that foot comes down. I think that should happen a little faster. So I'm going to grab this control, and I'm actually just going to, I'll kind of zoom in here so I can see it on the timeline a little better. I'm just going to move it forward so it happens over 2 frames. 1, 2. Okay, so it just gets a little bit of a faster slap. When being a little cartoony, I will sometimes go into that in-between frame and add just a little bit of toe drag, and you can kind of consider doing that anyway. It kind of gives it a little bit of a slap, and it feels like it's like the toes dragging on it, so I don't mind doing that a little bit in this one. And then I'll go over here and I'll do the same thing on this other side with the other foot. I'll make this hit a frame earlier. Shifted the wrong key. Frame earlier, and then maybe add just a little bit. And so we'll see what happens when we watch that now. It has just a little bit more impact to that step. Okay, it's not terribly big. It's not anything really even noticeable. The next thing we're going to look at is sort of this back foot, and what it does here is it pushes off. Okay, so it's really just from here to here I'm concerned with right now. And so right now it kind of feels like it's slipping a little bit, so I may play around with this pose a little bit. Maybe pull it back and maybe even roll the ball, so we get just a little bit of something like that. What happens if I do toe roll? It's a different thing entirely, isn't it? Okay, so just get a little bit of that push off there. And so what I want this to look like from here to here is that toe is really making contact and really pushing. And so I may just continue to kind of tweak almost frame by frame. Okay, but now the next thing is how this foot comes up off the ground. And so if we look at this, it just kind of drifts forward, right? And that doesn't feel like it's been pushing force, because then immediately as soon as it's let off, like if you push on an object for a long time and then your hand slips off of it, it kind of overshoots that, right? And so it's like right through here, I feel like I need to have it kind of go up a little bit more. But I don't want to just eyeball this. I mean, you can eyeball it, but it'll just be a little bit more work. So I'm going to create an editable motion trail. And so this is going to give me my arc for my foot. Okay, so this is, let's just go ahead and work with this, because I think this is a good thing to be sort of tweaking around now. So the interesting thing about how a foot arc works, let me open this really quick. If I were doing a walk cycle that's in place, the way the arc of the foot works is you have a line that goes straight back, and then the arc pushes up and kind of does that. Okay, and so this is, of course, the contact pose. This is where the foot's bending back. And so this is kind of the arc we would be going for there. Sorry if the screen's flickering for you too. It's kind of doing some weird stuff for me. So that's not really, we're kind of just going to be looking for a slightly longer version of that. I'm guessing it's going to look something like that. Okay, and so the thing that most people usually screw up is sometimes when they create their arc, they do it more just like this long elongated arc like that, right? And so what you're missing is that, you remember when we were talking about where the toe is pointing down, right here, as we come past our passing pose and into our up pose, our toe has to sort of flip forward here. And so that's what's happening, is our toe is kind of dipping and our foot's kind of dipping to flip forward and plop down. So really the best thing we could probably do at this point would be to actually track the tip of the toe, but we can also get away with kind of just doing some of that with the foot itself. And so pose 6 is okay. Pose 9, I think we could kind of even push down a little bit. And then so when we get out here to 12 or 11, I think we could even start pulling up on the foot. Maybe just a touch. And getting a little bit of this rotate back. So you kind of see what we get there out of the arc. And maybe that would even go a little further forward. Okay? And so we could dip this a little more if we wanted to go like N10 and we wanted to really sort of amplify this arc, we could. The point is just to kind of get that feel like the foot is swinging. Okay? And so now if we watch this, I want to delete this arc. I'm going to watch this, and the one that doesn't have anything on it. It's a very subtle change. We're probably not even catching most of it. But it's in there, and it's actually going to work a lot better once we get both legs in there. So now the other leg, we got a couple of things to kind of address. So we're going to work on the arc on the other leg too. But before we do that, let's just kind of look at a problem we're having here, which is this knee seems to kind of be popping. So watch it as we scrub through here. kind of pops down, and pops back up, and then pops and pops, and it's like there's just some knee pop there, and that's usually referred to as IK pop. When you extend an IK out to its limit, it kind of pops a little bit, right? And so one of the reasons for this is in the actual hips. Okay? So we can kind of pull this back down on this pose here. So if we went here and looked at this, maybe we actually end up pushing our character up a touch high. So we could pull the hips down, or we could also sort of consider rolling up on the foot just a little bit, just to make that knot pop. And so we want this bend in the knee, but we just don't want it to completely pop back out. Hold on 1 second here. Okay, so back to revising this. Sorry about that, I had a visitor at the door. So we got a little bit of that pop right there, and so it's really just trying to get that IK pop out of the hips. And so there's a couple of different ways we can do that. You can usually look at the graph editor and get some of this. So if I select that control, I'm actually going to look at the foot roll control. Yeah, so we'll see here that it's already starting to dip back down. And so I could probably fix that just by adding a key to that. There we go. So now what we get is a little bit of okay, and we get just a touch there too. So maybe what I would do is a little bit something like that, or maybe pull both of these up, or even pull that out a little bit. Okay, so now I'm still getting a little bit of a pop there. I'm just kind of tweaking with it a little bit. Alright, so some of that is stemming from this sudden rotation and movement here that we have, and it just sort of pops forward and starts drifting up here. So I think some of this will actually be solved once we kind of play with our there we go. Once we start playing with our curve or our arc of this foot. So we kind of clean some of it up with the arc here. It's coming a touch close there, so I'd probably go in there and nudge that out a little. So how we played with the arc on the other foot, we would go ahead and play with the arc on this foot as well. So the translate X. Yeah. Okay. And so maybe I would do a little bit something like that. And so yeah, I would go through and I'd work on that arc. I'd also work on little bitty things like, I think that roll starts actually happening back down a little too quick. This is the foot roll. And so if I look at that, I would just go ahead and hold this out there till then, and then this. And so we get okay. But the other things to look at is like how suddenly this thing starts to roll forward, which is our rotate X, I guess. And so we have to kind of consider some of that too. Like it starts to roll forward there. Like, why do we start it there? What if we had it one frame earlier where it kind of eases into it? I see that. And so just by having that makes it a little less jittery. I got a little bit of knee pop there still yet. So it's that. So we're having an issue with. So some of that may actually be. So this is really what it boils down to, is trying to go through here and figure out some of the very slight changes that we could make to get rid of the little issues that we have. So it's that this section kind of pops forward a little fast. If I just pull back on that just a touch. Still unhappy with that. At this point, the foot should actually maybe go ahead and start raising up a little bit. So maybe it's that. There we go. I think that'll be a decent solution for it. So again, going through and sort of working with that curve and making that curve do what we want it to do will really help as well. So I think I'm going to go ahead and stop right now, and we'll move on to another splining video where we look at the rest of the upper body and then look into polish.